In today's video, I'll show you how to set up a Google OAuth token that you can use with a ForthiC app. So the first step is to set up a Google app. So this is the most involved step, but I'll guide you through that. And at the end of that, we'll have a client ID and secret you can use. The second step is to run the gsheet examples. And by running this, we will trigger a couple of things. One is the setup of the client ID and secret, and the other is to go through the OAuth Flow so you can get a token that we'll store. And we'll write all of this information automatically into your secrets file, and I'll show you where that is. It's good to know where your credentials are and how they're stored and which one do you have. All right, so let's get started. All right, let's check out the ForthiC repo. So go to github.com/LinkedIn/ForthiC. And the easiest way to get the code is to click on this green code button and select the HTTPS option. So we'll copy that and head over to a terminal. And let's git clone that. So that's kind of it. Yeah, so let's go to the Google Developer Console. So the first step here would be to create a project. And you can call this whatever you like. Let's just call this coding ForthiC. Maybe coding ForthiC could be fine. We'll click create here. Okay, now you can select the project that you created. And there's a bunch of stuff going on here. But the first thing is, let's go to APIs and services and credentials. And we're going to create a credential. This is going to be an OAuth client ID. Oh, okay. So we're not going to do that. We're going to configure the consent screen. So let's do that next. Okay. So it's going to ask you for, is this going to be an internal or an external user type? You want to click internal. So then we can click create. And so for us, you can put whatever you want, but I'll just put ForthiC app here. You'll have to put your email address here. If you have a logo, then you can add that as well. And then the last step here is this, also your email. Okay. And then let's click save and continue. Okay, cool. And now let's go to, so you want to do this next, but in order to do this, you have to enable some APIs. So yeah, it's a very confusing interface. So let's see. So I think we want Sheets. Yep. So click on Google Sheets API, enable it. Okay, so let's go to credentials. So we'll create credentials here. We want to create an OAuth client ID. The application type is going to be a web application. We'll just call this ForthiC app as well. So one thing you will have to set up are the redirect URIs. Your app is going to redirect to Google. Google is going to ask for your consent. And then when you grant the consent, it's going to redirect you back to the original app with that consent information. And so what we need to do here is add the URI where the app is going to go back to. And so this is actually in the documentation in the ForthiC repo, but I'm just going to copy it here. I'll put a link to that documentation in the description. But this is the URI that you want to add. And then we'll click create. At this point, you'll want to copy the client ID and secret. And if you come back to, yes, so you can always get back to it here. Okay, cool. All right, so now we are done. The next step is to start the .forthic server and try to load the gsheet application. So what I want to do is we will type make to start the application server. And this is the web server that the .forthic app's running, and we're on port 8000. So let's go to that localhost. All right, so we see the sample apps, and in particular the one from the coding .forthic directory, and the one that we're interested in is the gsheet example. Before I click on that, I'll just show you what that looks like. So if we come here and we go to server, apps, coding .forthic, gsheet example. So we open that up, and then we can look at the main.forthic file. And so, yeah, so eventually we'll put our own URL here to our own gsheet, but I'll let this, we'll just go through it as is and see what happens. And, but yeah, so this is what we're running. All right, so if I click on the gsheet example, it's going to try to run it. There are no credentials for the client application, so we need to fill that out. And so we can just hop over to where we were before, click on this download OAuth client, then you can copy your client ID here and paste it into here. And then the same thing with the secret. Okay, I'm going to click update. So now it's saying I need to pick an account to use. So I'm going to use the account that I have for the .forthic app that we set up. And this is the OAuth Flow that I was describing earlier. So this .forthic app is the name that we picked. What it's asking for are the scopes that we specified. So I'm going to click allow. And so now we see an error here. So unable to find gsheet ID and tab key from this URL, which is obviously bogus. And so what we're going to do is we're going to use a test sheet. So I have one here. So if we open that up, and yeah, so it has these two columns here, Roman and Greek letters. I'm just going to take this URL, copy it, and then head back to Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to paste that URL here. All right, and so now let's run it again. So this time you see that it actually pulled the data and is rendering it here for us. And what's cool is that this you can just change this on the fly and then load it again, and it's going to just go out, make the API call. And so yeah, this is super powerful because basically once data is in a spreadsheet, it's structured. Then you essentially have records. And then you can start combining that information with other information that you have. This ability to combine data from a gsheet with data from Jira, these things are super powerful. The last thing I want to show you is how to start over. There is a secrets file, and in that secrets file are the credentials and secrets that you've set up automatically. And in our case, we have a client ID and secret for the Google app that we created. And we also have a Google OAuth token that we used when we went through the OAuth Flow. So if you wanted to for some reason use a different token, different account, you can do this by, so what I like to do is just, I just rename it, and this in effect removes it from the configuration, from the secrets file. And so if we ran that application again, our Forthic app would see that we didn't have a Google OAuth token and would take us through that OAuth flow again. So let's take a look at that real quick. So if I reload, it's going to look it up. It says, oh, there's no OAuth token, and so it's going to ask us to authenticate. And when we go through this flow, we will have a new OAuth token. So let's not go through that flow. So I'll come back here and then just reload this. And so that works again. And then the other thing that we could do is remove the client ID and secret. So if I did the same trick and reload this, what we'll see is we'll get back to that original form where it asks us to specify a client ID and secret for our app. And so that's kind of how you would start over if you needed to. And the last thing I'll show you is if you wanted to just revoke this token altogether. And for example, maybe you accidentally showed it to somebody, or it was exposed in some way. And at that point, the token is compromised and you really need to get a new one. But before you get a new one, you should really get rid of the old one or revoke the old one. And so one way you can do that is to go to your account. So if you manage your Google account, go to security. Then there are your connections to third-party apps and services. So we can look for our Forthic app example, and then this would be it. And then at the bottom, there's going to be this button that says delete all connections that you have with the Forthic app. So if you click on this, you'll see this dialog. It'll say basically, look, once you delete this, you won't be able to use the token anymore. And so you would just confirm if you wanted to do that. So yeah, so that's basically how you start over.